Hello and welcome back to All Things Money. I'm your host, David Blain. During this segment, we're going to continue talking about the basics of the economy and how to think about the economy and put some of the things that have been happening the past few years into perspective. If you have any comments or questions on the show, feel free to contact us. If you missed the first couple segments of today's show, head on over to the website dlblain.com. There you'll find our phone number or email, as well as archived copies of the show. I think you'll find that the first segment we're talking about Facebook, the last segment we started talking about this economic building blocks, and I think you'll find the series of show that we're doing today, as well as on into next week, will be very good for your understanding, putting things in perspective. Okay, so we're talking about an economy as an aggregation of all the transaction between buyers and sellers, and that the total economy is basically equivalent to all the money spent, which could be either cash as well as credit, and the total quantity of goods and services in the economy. And between those two factors, that's what sets the price. We talked about how money can be in the form of cash and, of course, credit cards, lending, anything where you agree to pay money later is credit. And so all economic activity and financial market prices are due to two things: the change in money or credit, so the total dollars amount, and the total quantity sold. Once again, remember, all changes in economic activity, either going up, economy's growing, or going down, so all changes are due to the change in money or credit in the economy, so the total dollars available or the total quantity sold, the supply of things. Now, in the modern economy, well, and I don't know, probably the same historically, but the change in total dollars available has a much bigger impact on activity and prices than the change in quantity. And it's simply because it's easier to create money and credit than it is supply. And so when you have a central bank able to create money, when you have banks and lenders able to create credit, you can see that that is much more easily manipulated. So once again, this is very important. All the change in economic activity, either growth, expansion, or recession, is due to changes in the total money available, cash and credit, and the total quantity sold. And that total money available, cash and credit, has a much bigger impact on the activity and prices than the change in quantity, simply because it's easier to manipulate. And it's because of the fact that money and credit are easier to create than goods and services, it leads to cycles. That's the base, as basic as I can get it. You know, if it took the lead time to produce, say, an airplane or design and create a new iPod or something like that is very long, you can create new credit at the instant. If you go to your neighbor and say, "Hey, will you loan me $10 so I can go buy lunch?" You've created credit. You didn't need anybody's permission. You didn't need to invest in resources, plant, factory. All you needed was some money, and you could instantly create credit. So you can see that it's that credit and money that really has the larger impact on the economy than the supply side, the goods and services available. Let's talk a minute about the buyers. Who are the buyers out there in the marketplace? Of course, you have private buyers of goods and services, households. Of course, we're all a member of a household. You're buying food, you're buying cars, you're buying houses, washers, dryers, that sort of thing. Also businesses, businesses buying real estate, businesses buying office supplies, computers, furniture, desks, things like that. And this would include both domestic businesses as well as foreign businesses and individuals. You have foreign tourists that come to our country and engage in buying and selling transactions, and that contributes to economic activity. So you have the private sector. Any household or business, foreign or domestic, that engages in purchasing items, goods, services, and financial instruments in the economy is a buyer. Of course, the other big buyer is the government. And the government really break into two sections. Number one, federal government spending, which is what they spend on goods and services. You know, they need to purchase water and electricity and buildings and office supplies, and you know, they have cars, and the military buys planes and boats, ships, and so forth and so on. So you have the federal government purchasing goods and services in the economy. And they also provide payments to individuals. They collect taxes and provide payments, but that's not really what we're talking about here, because that's really just kind of a transfer from one hand to the other. But the actual buying the government does of goods and services is a big component of the economy, and it has an influence on the economic activity. But once again, as I said before, not as much as the money factor. So that's where the second part of government spending comes in, the central bank. Ben Bernanke, the Federal Reserve, is called the central bank. The ECB, the European Union Central Bank, which is a focal point of a lot that's going on in the crisis over in Europe right now. They have the ability to create money. They're not like the federal and state governments that are really buying goods and services. The central bank has the ability to create money. And I won't go into all that, but suffice to say that they can actually create money. They're the ones that control the actual dollars in the economy. The way they do that is beyond this. Just know that they can create money. The second thing that they do is they mostly spend money on financial assets. You know, they buy, most recently, like the TARP, Troubled Asset Relief Program. They're buying financial assets. Operation Twist, where the Fed was buying long-dated maturity securities. You know, they buy actual financial assets and they create money. So those are the buyers in the marketplace. You have the private household businesses, foreign and domestic, and you have government spending, both, you know, the regular goods and services that everybody uses, as well as the central bank, very unique in that they can create money, and they're a big buyer of financial assets. Okay, so that's going to wrap up the show for today. Just kind of in summary, we're talking about the economy. Remember, the economy is a summation of all the transactions of buying and selling, and that the change in economic activity is largely driven by the supply of money and credit, more so than actual goods and services. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Hopefully we'll see you again next week.
The proceeding was a paid program. The opinions expressed are not necessarily those of WNBU and Inner Banks Media.